Good Tuesday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for September the 19th. Today we are reading together in 2 Kings chapter 3. 2 Kings chapter 3 is going to tell us the story of a rebellion by Moab against the northern tribes of Israel and how Israel is going to respond to such a rebellion. Let me get that text up on the screen for us, and we'll read along together. The kings we are dealing with today is from the northern tribes, King Joram or Jehoram, again, name thing going on there, and also King Jehoshaphat of Judah. They are going to be the main characters. They, along actually with the king of Edom, whoever that is, seems to be someone who is a vassal state to Israel as well. And so they are going to be another portion of this warring party that's going to go up against Moab. So let's read along here in 2 Kings chapter 3. In verse number 1, Joram, son of Ahab, became king over Israel in Samaria during the 18th year of Judah's king Jehoshaphat, and he reigned 12 years. He did what was evil in Yahweh's sight, but not like his father and mother, for he removed the sacred pillar of Baal his father had made. Nevertheless, Joram clung to the sins that Jeroboam, son of Nebat, had caused Israel to commit. He did not turn away from them. King Mesha of Moab was a sheep breeder. He used to pay the king of Israel 100,000 lambs and the wool of 100,000 rams. But when Ahab died, the king of Moab rebelled against the king of Israel. So he rebelled against Joram, it seems. So King Joram marched out from Samaria at that time and mobilized all Israel. I guess it could also mean that he rebelled against Ahaziah, and then Joram steps in and tries to fix the situation. Nevertheless, King Joram marched out from Samaria at that time and mobilized all Israel. Then he sent a message to King Jehoshaphat of Judah. The king of Moab has rebelled against me. Will you go with me to fight against Moab? Jehoshaphat said, I will go. I am as you are, my people as your people, my horses as your horses. He asked, which route should we take? He replied, the route of the wilderness of Edom. So the king of Israel, the king of Judah, and the king of Edom set out after they had traveled their indirect route. For 7 days, they had no water for the army or the animals with them. Then the king of Israel said, oh no, Yahweh has summoned these three kings only to hand them over to Moab. But Jehoshaphat said, isn't there a prophet of Yahweh here? Let's inquire of Yahweh through him. One of the servants of the king of Israel answered, Elisha, son of Shaphat, who used to pour water on Elijah's hands, is here. Jehoshaphat affirmed, the word of Yahweh is with him. So the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat and the king of Edom went to him. However, Elisha said to King Joram of Israel, what do we have in common? Go to the prophets of your father and your mother. But the king of Israel replied, no, because it is Yahweh who has summoned these three kings to hand them over to Moab. Elisha responded, by the life of the Lord of armies, of Yahweh of armies, before whom I stand, if I did not have respect for Jehoshaphat of Judah, I wouldn't look at you. I would not take notice of you. Now bring me a musician. While the musician played, Yahweh's hand came on Elisha. Then he said, this is what Yahweh says, dig ditch after ditch in this wadi. For Yahweh says, you will not see wind or rain, but the wadi will be filled with water. You will drink, you and your cattle and your animals. This is easy in Yahweh's sight. He will also hand Moab over to you. Then you will attack every fortified city and every choice city. You will cut down every good tree and stop up every spring. You will ruin every good piece of land with stones. About the time for the grain offering the next morning, water certainly came from the direction of Edom and filled the land. All Moab had heard that the kings had come up to fight against them. So all who could bear arms, from the youngest to the oldest, were summoned and took their stand at the border. When they got up early in the morning, the sun was shining on the water, and the Moabites saw that the water across from them was red like blood. This is blood, they exclaimed. The kings have crossed swords, and their men have killed one another. So to the spoil, Moab. However, when the Moabites came to Israel's camp, the Israelites attacked them and they fled from them. So Israelite went into the land attacking Moabites. They would destroy the cities, and each of them would throw a stone to cover every good piece of land. They would stop up every spring and cut down every good tree. This went on until this went on until only the buildings of Kir Hareseth were left. Then men with slings surrounded the city and attacked it. When the king of Moab saw that the battle was too fierce for him, he took 700 swordsmen with him to try to break through to the king of Edom, but they could not do it. So he took his firstborn son, who was to become king in his place, and offered him as a burnt offering on the city wall. Great wrath was on the Israelites, and they withdrew from him and returned to their lands. And that is Second Kings chapter 3, the rebellion of Moab. So the text begins, or one thing I'll mention just about this text is specifically the issue between Moab and Israel and Judah and Edom, is that a great deal of this story is actually recorded on an archaeological find that is known as the Moabite stone. Now, of course, the way they tell the story has a much more generous Moabite spin to it. But it just goes to show that there are things, even within the Old Testament, that are accounted for in secular history. So that's just kind of a cool note about this particular chapter. But the text begins with Joram. Remember, going back to verse number 17 of chapter 1 here in 2 Kings, we see Joram come to power, and the text tells us that he did what was evil in Yahweh's sight, which is not surprising to us since he is a king of Israel after all. And I think this is the 9th king of Israel. Not a one of them have been worth anything. They've all rebelled against Yahweh. They've all walked in the ways of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat. Remember, that's something that is always said about them. And then about Ahab, that he did even worse things than Jeroboam did. Well, here within this particular text, we learn that yes, he walked in the ways of Jeroboam. He clung to the sins of Jeroboam and the fact that he worshipped Yahweh in a paganistic way. We do see that here within the text mentioned. But it says that he did not do everything that his father and mother had done. In fact, he'd actually removed the sacred pillar to Baal that Ahab had made. So he's scaled back a little bit on the paganism. He's not just a straight paganistic worshiper now, worshiping pagan gods like Baal, but he's still worshiping Yahweh in a paganistic way, more than likely still employing the golden calves of Dan and Bethel and the other high places that are in various areas. So yes, there's a bit of positive here, but we're not talking still about a quality king in Israel. We're still going to have to wait for that. And don't hold your breath, because I don't know if you'll get another breath looking for a good king in Israel. Nevertheless, as we continue through the story, the occasion at hand is the rebellion of the Moabite king Mesha against Israel. He was offering tribute to Israel, doing so through lambs and also the wool of rams. And yet he said enough is enough. So he stopped giving the tribute to Israel. And Joram is going to march against Moab and basically pay him back for his stopping of the tribute. But he's not going to do it on his own. He's going to ask Jehoshaphat for some help. Jehoshaphat seems to be somebody that is much more skilled in battle, always someone who has a lot more experience in battle. So it's good to have him on his side. And Jehoshaphat says, fine, I'll go with you. My horses are your horses, my people, your people. I'm like you. That goes back to something similar that he said to Ahaziah back in chapter 22 and verse 4 of 1 Kings. And again, I want to suggest to you this is not a good thing. It's not good that he is making these allegiances with the king of Israel, because again, he's wicked. He's not seeking Yahweh. 2 Kings 22 and verse 44 seems to indicate that this was a negative thing in the life of Jehoshaphat. But Joram asked Jehoshaphat, which way should we go? And he says, well, we're not going to take the traditional route, because Moab might expect that, but instead we're going to go through the wilderness of Edom. And in doing so, they also pick up the king of Edom and some of his soldiers, it seems, to go on this journey. It was a week's worth of a journey, and they eventually had no food or water. Or or they had no water, excuse me, specifically. Make a bit of sense since they are in a wilderness. And at this point, Joram's like, "Oh no, Yahweh's getting me. He's going to deliver us over to the Moabites." Why would he think that? Why would he be concerned with that? Maybe he has a guilty conscience for some of the stuff that he's doing. Maybe he has a guilty conscience concerning his father and the sins of his brother as well. But Jehoshaphat, he isn't so worried. He says, "Hey, let's look for a man of God, a prophet. Do we have one around here? Surely there's one around here." And somebody says, "Well, we have Elisha. Let's bring him so that we can figure out what exactly is going on." So whenever Elisha comes, he looks at Joram and he says, "Well, what do me and you have in common? Why would I come and help you? If you want help, why don't you go seek help from the prophets of your mother and your father? Go talk to them." Remember, his brother had sought the future telling, the fortune telling of Baal Zebub of the Philistines. So why don't you go do something like that too? And Joram, again, he's distraught. "No, I have to reach out to you because Yahweh's the one that's making this happen again." Maybe a guilty conscience he has here. And Elisha responds back to him and says, "Listen, the only reason I'm talking to you is because I have some respect for Jehoshaphat. If I didn't respect him, I wouldn't notice you. I wouldn't look at you. I wouldn't do anything for you. But bring me a musician." It's kind of a strange request. But the musician comes and plays music. And in the process of him playing music, Yahweh comes to Elisha, and Elisha begins to prophesy by the power of Yahweh and tells them again to do something strange. Go dig some ditches. Go dig some ditches. And you're not going to see wind. You're not going to see rain. But these ditches, they are going to fill up. And you will have a victory over the Moabites. And you're going to go into the land, and you're going to have you're just going to absolutely obliterate everything about them. You're going to attack every fortified city. You're going to attack every choice city. You're going to cut down the good trees. You're going to stop up the springs. Everything you're going to do, you're going to devastate. So be ready. Verse 20, about the time for the evening offering, the next morning, the text says that water suddenly came from the direction of Edom and filled the land. It's very possible that Yahweh brought some torrential downpour from the higher places in Edom so that it flowed down here into this valley, into this wadi, and the water collected there. Well, in the meantime, the Moabites are hearing that the Israelites and Judahites and Edomites are coming against them, so they muster everybody that they can, from the youngest to the oldest, and they've got to take their stand. This is their last stand that they can take. They get up early in the morning. They look out. They see the water that is in the ditches, and the sun seems to be reflecting off of it in such a way that the water looks red. So they're thinking, "Oh, this little alliance that they put together between Israel and Judah and Edom, it seems like it's fallen apart. They probably all kill each other. We get all the spoils. This is going to be easy for us. They took care of this fighting thing for us." So whenever they go into the Israelite camp, the Israelites aren't dead. And they have a great slaughter over them. They surprise attack them, and then they end up chasing them, going into the land of the Moabites and doing just like they were told, to destroy the cities, every good piece of land, stop up every spring, cut down every green tree. They just completely attacked, and again, great devastation within the land of Moab. Well, whenever Mesha figures out that the battle is too fierce for him, the text says that he takes 700 men. He goes into a city, and he takes 700 men. He tries to break through to the king of Edom. Maybe he tries to find some solace with him, but he couldn't do it. So what does he do? Something awful, something only a pagan would think to do. He takes his son, offers his son on the city wall, makes his son, who is going to be king, by the way, into a human sacrifice. And the text says that great wrath was on the Israelites. What could that be? I would venture to guess that what happens is that the people of Moab see just how far their king is willing to go to find success, that they have kind of a rush of confidence, a rush of invigoration, and they're able to push the Israelites out at that time. That's what I would assume happens here. And at this point, once they've already caused a great deal of devastation, the Israelites retreat and they go back to their own land. But just looking at this text again, here is another instance where Yahweh shows his power through his prophet, and an Israelite king benefits from it. Why will these Israelite kings not learn that Yahweh wants to bless them and that all they have to do is turn to him in service and commitment? All they have to do is cut down the high places, to get rid of the paganistic worship, to burn up the calves, to get worship where it's supposed to be. If they would do that, if they would return to Jerusalem and worship, then Yahweh would continue to bless them. Unfortunately, that they don't. But Yahweh's patience is great. And we'll see. Again, my hopes are not up, but maybe, just maybe, we'll have an Israelite king eventually do the right thing. I don't know. We'll see as we continue on through this story. Continuing on tomorrow, reading together in 2 Kings chapter 4. Hope that you have a great rest of your Tuesday, everyone. If you have any questions about this text, any comments about this text, please feel free to leave that in the comments section below. And hope we will see you tomorrow as we read together from 2 Kings chapter 4. Take care and God bless.